There are two constants in the multiverse: life and death. But what happens when one single person can dominate both of these forces, bending them for good, evil, and sometimes just some really selfish means? Well, what you get is Liliana Vess, the greatest necromancer in the history of Magic the Gathering. She's a baddie, she's also a goodie, but regardless of what point in the story we're at, she's always fine, like a necromantic wine. Ever since getting into Magic, I've always been very curious about her because, to be real with you, she's one of the most important characters and planeswalkers in this entire franchise. I'd argue she's one of the big 5 super famous planeswalkers that people know about, and the first one that I actually get to focus on and learn about through this very channel together with you. And as you can imagine from a necromancer, her primary color is of course black, which kind of tracks with the little skull icon and everything, but really that's all I know about her entire lore to this point. Well, technically I do know that she does some Innistrad stuff with Garrick and is evil with Bolas at some point, which I learned in the other videos I've made so far. So let's just get into it really and learn what the price of manipulating life and death themselves actually is in Magic the Gathering and what it all leads to. The Unholy Rise of Liliana. Liliana Vess's story begins the way that all the best Magic tragedies do: privileged upbringing, bad coping mechanisms, and one extremely cursed and bad decision. Raised in Benalia on Dominaria, Liliana grew up under the shadow of her own father, a conquering general who ruled whatever land he happened to be standing on that week. And even early on in her life, Liliana was already pushing buttons, ignoring expectations, and collecting a really bad reputation, which doesn't really go over too well with her handlers. You see, Liliana was actually part of a group known as the Forward Order. It's like, magic, healing, Christianity, or something like that. There she studied under Lady Anna, learning restoration magic, compassion, and restraint. But kind of like all preachers' daughters, she went a little bit wild on the weekend. She was sneaking off to experiment with necromancy, because in Liliana's mind, death is just, healing, but with some extra steps. Two sides of the same coin, and she was the wielder, which actually pretty sick to know. I never realized that she was canonically one of the greatest healers in the multiverse. It's also really cool to see that she has these white mana aligned ideals that directly clash with her black aligned ambition. I mean, I'm just assuming, but I'm gonna speak for you too and say we love ourselves a good morally gray goth girl. Though, as you can imagine, as a planeswalker, Liliana also had some deep emotional baggage. That's kind of a prerequisite, as we have learned at this point. And hers, of course, was her brother Josubes. He was struck by a very mysterious magical illness during battle, which actually caused Lady Anna to send Liliana on a near impossible quest to gather magic tree roots. Which, of course, all well and good, doesn't sound too crazy until she finds the groves destroyed and meets a mysterious figure claiming loyalty to her father, the Raven Man. And make note of this guy because he's like the worst person in Liliana's life. And people like Nicol Bolas are still about to be relevant in the story, so it's gonna be pretty bad. Now, Big Raven convinces her to use necromancy to revive the tree's remains and brew a forbidden cure. And as you can tell, he's of course really trustworthy. I mean, I swear. Now, to be clear, the potion does actually work, technically, because Josu does survive but goes violently insane and becomes something else, something really monstrous. So then, forced to put him down, Liliana raises his victims as zombies to fight him, and in that moment of horror, guilt, and raw power, her planeswalker spark finally ignites, flinging her all the way to our favorite plane, Innistrad. On Innistrad, Liliana decides to embrace the darkness and dives deep into necromancy. She studies under vampires and liches, some spooky undead, but crucially just refuses to become an undead herself. She's not going to have that Josu treatment, no sir, but she even crosses paths with the most infamous Soren Markov, who casually defeats her and tells her to stay in her lane, please. Not very progressive of you, Soren. Come on, get with the times, man. Eventually, Liliana then returns to Dominaria, confronts the Raven Man, nothing happens, and she just sort of drifts through the multiverse. At some point, she also briefly studies in Witherbloom at Strixhaven, the, really fancy magical school that's not Tolarian Academy, actually. And then right about now, or somewhere within these many years, the mending happens. And this is the part where I have to admit to you that Liliana is a little bit of a weird character, and it's not just because she's a goth baddie. It's because all the stuff I listed before happened over the course of hundreds of years, and her power of life and death helped her keep a really nice, youthful glow. But then the mending happened, and Planeswalkers all lost a lot of their true powers, and so she was in a little bit of a bind and started to actually age. Yeah, don't look at me, please. That's why I shave. I've been quite literally just stressing out about turning 30 this year, and I was like looking at my hair, and I was like, everything's still good. I don't know. I needed to shave. I was like, bring the youth back. But now this is like just baby face me, so sorry you have to deal with that. Anyways, aging Liliana now, right? Ripening, maturing. Post-mending, she encounters Nicol Bolas, now weakened, but still insufferable. He reminds her that planeswalkers used to be basically gods, and that's when Big Bad Bolas offers her that power of youth again that she's been missing through a demonic pact with not one, not two, not even three, but 4 demons. Introducing the hottest boy band of the 4500s, it's Liliana's patrons, the bad boy with the big tail, Cathophet, Avacyn's greatest enemy, Griselbrand, the Afterlife's chilliest guy, Razakath, and the hottest man, Belzenlock. With all these 4 people's powers combined, Liliana rose to great power and immediately got to work breaking those pacts so she could have all the power, but none of the consequences. And I mean, she has Griselbrand on her side, a card that's actually banned in Commander, and whenever anyone plays it in any other format like Modern, the game is just over. Draw 7 cards for 7 life, as if the life total ever mattered. Heated Necromancy. Eventually, Liliana drifts to Ravnica, the plane of the 10 guilds, political backstabbing, and extremely questionable life choices there. And while we're here, she settles in for quite a while as a freelance operative for Tezzeret's Infinite Consortium, which is basically the really smart wizard Craigslist, Fiverr? Hang on there. During this era, she tracks down a rebellious wizard, that smooth-talking Jace, the mind sculptor Beleren, and she tries to jump his bones. Actually, in reality, Liliana befriends Jace and his associate Callist Ruka, and before long, the professional relationship turns personal. Now, I'll be honest, Jace and Callist are a, somewhat weird pair because as far as I can tell, they were not an item, but multiple sources say that in this moment Liliana and Jace have an affair. So I guess maybe they were, or do people just not know what the word affair means anymore? To me, a little bit unclear in the sources. Regardless, they were getting hot and heavy, is what we're getting at, right? She stays by Jace's side, even as he spirals into an identity crisis so severe, he believes he is calloused. Weird. But surprise, Liliana is playing a much deeper game here because she ultimately betrays Jace, pushing him into conflict with Tezzeret as part of an even larger scheme, secretly backed by none other than Nicol Bolas. Her reward? Well, that was supposed to be freedom from her demonic pacts. Surely that will be a quick and easy solution to that conflict, right? No, it completely falls apart, of course, and that's why we don't trust shady elder dragons, no matter how much drip and aura they actually have. And what's really unfortunate here is that multiple times she almost chooses Jace over power because she was actually kind of down bad for him after being a alleged homewrecker, but fear of her pact won every single time. The Veil-Cursed Queen. The Chain Veil incident. Oh, how I despise you so. This is one of the moments I actually already knew about Liliana back from my Garrick video recently, and man, seeing it from this side does really not help her case at all. She's one bad baddie here. I mean, okay, here's how it all unfolded. Kothophet, I can't get over how funny that name is. Kothophet, the bassiest in her Patreon band, sent Lily to retrieve an ancient Onaki relic known as the Chain Whale, depicted right here. Maybe you do run it in your deck, maybe you don't. Regardless, it's fairly iconic, I dare say. But here is where things went really wrong in the story. On the way to the Onaki catacombs, Liliana kills a rampaging beast, unknowingly ticking off Garrick Wildspeaker, who had his own very personal relationship with it, because Garrick then locks in and hunts her down. And in response, Liliana counters by activating the veil and just utterly wrecking him and cursing him indefinitely. God, I wish I could get utterly wrecked and cursed indefinitely by her. Drunk on the Veil's power and maybe a couple of espresso martinis, Liliana immediately conquers a fortress on another plane, briefly sits on the throne like some dark queen, and then realizes the obvious. Kothophet never expected her to hand the Veil over willingly, so she buckles up her pants, pulls her boots up, and planeswalks straight to his sanctuary. Now on the side, Dragon Daddy Sharkin Vol was actually scoping her out and reported everything that was going on to Nicol Bolas. Liliana then destroys Kothophet, but the victory comes at a cost. The demonic tattoos that are actually binding her begin to bleed, and the Veil's curse tightens its grip, which caused that prickly thorn, the Raven Man, remember him, to show up? In a really weird way too. Pretty much all the weird random bleeding caused her to summon a legendary Onaki Sage for answers, and then she gets hunted, burned alive in a farmhouse, and nearly killed, but that Ogre Sage corpse came in clutch because he saved Liliana and revealed his true identity as the Raven Man. God damn it, man. Alright. Using the same golden potion that once cursed Jozu, he heals her, and realizing the truth, Liliana stabs him, dons the veil, and planes walks away. Again, I told you this was gonna be weird. Innistrad, Griselbrand, and dives. Liliana's hunt next drags her back to Innistrad because it was, thematically appropriate for her to be there, and well, more importantly, Griselbrand, the lead singer of the Patrons, was imprisoned there alongside the Archangel Avacyn inside of a big fancy pillar known as the Hell Vault. Oh, and a big boy Garrick is still hot on her tail, so the two briefly cross paths in Nephalia, where Liliana raises a swarm of ghouls, ghasts, and probably a skeleton or two, I imagine, just for fun so that she, can cover her escape. After that, Liliana meets some people, betrays some people, manipulates a lot of other people, and eventually actually finds the Hell Vault. Funnily enough, all of this meddling then resulted in the Hell Vault shattering, releasing both Avacyn and Griselbrand, and Liliana then hunts Griselbrand across Innistrad, cutting through angels and demons alike, and when he pulls a Doctor Strange and tries to bargain, she just annihilates him with the Chain Veil, trying to pierce the veil. With old Grizzy dead, which, he should be, no one's drawing that many cards ever again under my watch, Liliana thought that she'd, just gotten a little bit more relief. But nope. The Chain Veil then, of course, starts whispering, which is a fancy new trick that's, equal parts impressive and unsettling, I dare say. So she planeswalks back to Chandalar and the ruins of the Onaki Temple, where she's immediately confronted by an angel guarding the very site. The angel then begs her to stop what she's doing, and as you can imagine, Liliana does not. And as the angel then, of course, is dying, she warns Liliana that she is nothing more than a vessel, a living conduit for the trapped Onaki spirits clawing for release. Weakened by the veil, Liliana is then flooded with visions of the ancient Onaki civilization, their rise, their fall, and the Raven Man? Why? Then she has this weird moment where she actually tries to return the Chain Veil, but the Target employees say no, they do not accept the return because it's been longer than 2 weeks, and now she's stuck with it. So instead, Liliana then returns to Ravnica and seeks out her ex-fling, that silky, smooth Jace Beleren. The goal here was to, yes, get some, and also get some help slaying the 2 remaining demons that she's still pacted with. Much to her own dismay though, Garrick tried to kill Jace looking for ignore Liliana, so Jace was not having it with her, but Liliana gently boops his nose with her finger and he folds immediately like any reasonable man would and should. At least I think that's what would have happened if the battle for Zendikar set hadn't happened. Because apparently, the return of some really sexy, nice full art lands was much more important to Jace than Liliana's own soul, which I think fair enough. I mean, look at them. They're pricey for a reason. All I'm saying is it's kind of hard to say if he was right or wrong here. Long story short, the GOAT, Gideon Jura, then arrives, whisking Jace away to deal with the Eldrazi crisis on Zendikar. Liliana, of course, refuses to help since there is literally nothing in it for her and gets really salty that Jace bailed on her, and then the Raven Man shows up to literally just salt the wound and laugh at her. What a guy. I hope you can see why I said at the beginning of this video that he was gonna be the most terrible person in her life. Turning a new, less evil leaf. This next chunk of Liliana's lore happens during Shadows over Innistrad, which I thought was an important thing to call out here for a moment since it's a fairly iconic set that I'm pretty sure a bunch of you actually playing cards from. And so while Jace and the Gatewatch are off on Zendikar doing the very normal task of killing 2 Eldrazi titans, Liliana instead retreats to her estate on Innistrad, where surely no other Eldrazi titans will appear. Spoiler alert, they will. In the meantime, Jace just sort of appears, gets hunted by some werewolves, and because she's still got some love for him, Liliana saves him and brings him back home for dinner. Jace explains that he's been searching for Sorin Markov, which immediately alarms Liliana. Remember, last time they met, Sorin whooped her in an all-out necromancy brawl, so the dynamic duo try and raid the Markov Manor, which ultimately results in nothing. Also, I guess not really important for the story, but it does happen, so why leave it out? Some guy named Garrett shows up, speaking for a different dude named Dirk, and they try to exorcise the chain whale, which didn't work. Didn't think it would, but I mean, it happens. And then it actually does happen. Emrakul enters the fray, the actual sexiest character in all of Magic the Gathering, dare I say so. So, anyways, where were we? Yes, as Innistrad is now collapsing, Sorin Markov and Olivia Voldaren assemble a big-ass vampire army and yell at Liliana for, you know, breaking the Hell Vault and unleashing hell. And right when Liliana's about to be, you know, toxically avoidant again, Jace starts echoing in her mind and she decides to be a good person for once. That church girl was still in there somewhere apparently. And she actually does it in the gnarliest way possible. She raises a truly massive zombie army to fight the Eldrazi. The Gatewatch was a little bit sus, especially Nissa, who can feel the whales screaming, but they really needed the help and gambled on my girl Lily here. Facing Emrakul directly, Liliana nearly loses control as both the Veil and the Raven Man urge her to promptly get Emrakul out of here. Instead, she doubles down, hoping for no whammies, and draws on the Veil's power to levels that rivaled her pre-mending strength as well, but almost died for it. She passes out, wakes up, and finds out that Tamio and the Gatewatch actually sealed Emrakul in the moon. Woohoo! So she leaves Innistrad, she abandons her entire zombie army there, and fun fact, this is actually where Gisa Sesani got hers. Liliana The Watcher. When the Gatewatch decided to officially set up shop in Jace's apartment on Ravnica, Liliana immediately just bought a mansion instead. Also, just like, don't you feel like it's crazy that Jace just lives in an apartment? I don't know why, but that's just so funny to me. After all of that, a dude named Dovin Ba'an appeared. If you know, you know, which I really do not yet, but I think it's more connected to Chandra's storyline. Anyways, Liliana kind of told him off, said that the task that the Gatewatch was doing was bigger than what he wanted. He leaves, and Chandra is left furious and shaken. You can remember that for the inevitable Chandra video. So Liliana does what she knows best, helps her new bestie toxically avoid it. The two planeswalk to Kaladesh, which I think objectively has the nicest series of cards ever printed in Magic the Gathering. I mean, the Kaladesh inventions, make me horny. Anyways, they arrive in the city of Girapur, where Liliana subtly tries to convince Chandra to just murder the group of people who executed her parents, and right after that, out of pretty much nowhere, the two run into Tezzeret, her old evil boss, remember him? They dip and get chewed out by Nissa, so Liliana dips again and finds Jace on Ravnica. Dude, like, multiverse hopping really does have its benefit. Then Tezzeret does some scheming and steals some tech, and this leads, the Gatewatch to team up with some renegades on Kaldesh. Liliana and Gideon butt heads over what a reasonable amount of lethal force is, and well, you can guess what side the Necromancer was on over the pure of heart warrior probably. And to her credit, she did try and warn Gideon that Tezzeret will not be fighting fair, and they shouldn't either. But then the big scheme is finally revealed. Tezzeret has managed to take over the Planar Bridge, a powerful device capable of contacting other planes, and a very cool magic card. This, as you can imagine, is pretty bad news for, the magic world. So Liliana says, screw all the waiting, and she just raises a big old scary army to fight Tezzeret, kicks his ass, and then finds out that he is working for Big Boy Bolus, and that he's on the Egyptian-themed plane of Amonkhet. And then very quickly, before any more plotting can be done and any plot twist can happen, the Gatewatch destroys the Planar Bridge. The most important moment in Liliana's entire life. And now, we approach one of the most legendary set blocks in Magic history, Amonkhet. And I think the phrase Hour of Devastation pretty perfectly describes it in its entirety. Let me set the stage for you here, right? When the Gatewatch finally reaches Amonkhet, they're immediately greeted by the undead armies of Bolus, which doesn't really work on Liliana, of course, and the same really goes for Amonkhet gods. She openly mocks them, nothing too fancy in her opinion, she says. Liliana then shifts her way to the shadows, and while the rest of the Gatewatch investigates Bolus, Lily here was on a side quest trying to figure out how to puppet master everyone into actually killing Razaketh, the drummer of her Demon Pack band. And as I'm sure you've caught on to at this point, someone shows up to mess things up. The Raven Man. You're nothing if not persistent, man. All right. He hits her with the classic, "Your friends have changed you" line, like all toxic men do, and when Jace appears to chat up his girl, the Raven Man vanishes. Jace, who's not exactly known to be a dummy, but instead being known to be a mind sculptor, realizes she's been manipulating events to reach Razaketh, and he accuses her of betraying the Gatewatch's trust, which, let's be real, she kinda totally did. But before the situationship here can work out their issues, mummies start attacking the city. Now, I'll tell you this, the specifics here are very complicated and, full of a bunch of proper nouns that I don't really think make a huge difference for Liliana's story, really, but if stuff like that is what you want me to include in these videos, let me know in the comments. If you're like, Manu, how are you skipping over lore? Let me know, I'll put it in next time if you really want to, but, I kind of feel like not necessary. Anyways, the short and sweet version of it all is as follows. Bolus uses the second sun to do some big magic power stuff, and Razaketh appears to threaten the casual citizens of the plane. Lily goes and pulls some dark magic and rips apart Razaketh in a truly brutal fashion, and that's kinda that. 3 out of 4 demons are donezo. But also, as you can guess, the victory doesn't really last. The Gatewatch soon learns that Bolus has been building an army of Eternals, not the Marvel ones. Instead, these are actually elite warriors turned into perfected undead. When they confront the dragon himself, they're utterly crushed, just absolutely bodied by the Elder Dragon. Liliana, caring about her life more than her friend's death, betrays the Gatewatch and flees, knowing well that Bolus spared her for a reason, and realizes that's gonna go poorly very soon. She returns to Dominaria, where, as you can imagine, the Gatewatch was not really too happy with her. Nissa's furious, Chandra is very hurt, Jace was probably a little bit turned on, let's be real, and a Johnny Goldmane was there. I forgot to mention that. But Liliana had a reason. Sort of. She argues that she's absolutely useless against Bolus while still bound by demon contracts, which, remember, he was actually the one who originally set them all up. And then she reveals that the last of them, Belzenlock, is on Dominaria, where they are currently right now. Pretty much all of the Gatewatch then bail on her except their super nice, really stand-up leader, Gideon, who actually offers to help her kill Belzenok. Together, they return to Vess, Liliana's ruined homeland, and there she discovers the cruel truth. Her brother Jozu had been transformed into a lich deliberately used by Belzenok to weaken her, so Liliana confronts Jozu and finally destroys him for good, which doesn't really seem like a super big powerful full circle moment to me, but you have to remember that really all of her bad decisions started with her brother and those trees, right? So I guess it's a moment, and as he dies, he curses her, blaming her magic for the family's downfall and warning her that the void awaits, which, yeah, that really sucks, but also she kinda had it coming, if you ask me. But at this point, Lily also's got bigger, more demonic fish to fry, so Lily and Gideon join forces with the Weatherlight crew. The Weatherlight is a very cool steampunk airship, by the way, and then they uncover the power of the Black Blade and use it to finally kill Belzenok. Side note here, I'm really amped up that I get to talk about Black Blades on my Magic channel and my One Piece channel. Haha, imagine we got Yoru from One Piece in Magic. If you don't watch One Piece, that means nothing to you, but it would be very cool, is all I'm saying. Anyways, woohoo! 4 out of 4 demons are slain. So now Liliana is at max power, free, and can just go destroy Bolus, right? Go team! But Liliana didn't quite read the fine print, and her pack contract defaults to its broker, Nicol Bolas himself, so he now owns Liliana outright, and if she disobeys, the magic will age her into dust. So in a moment of really just very depressing vibes, Liliana leaves with Bolas, and Gideon sulks back towards the homies to break the bad news. The War of the Sparks, Great Traitor. Now we actually head back to Ravnica, where Big Nicol Bolas installs Liliana as General of the Dread Horde, a bunch of really powerful undead, and puts her in direct command of the Eternals. Bound by the contract, she has to obey, like a good prisoner, but like a bad prisoner, she bends every rule she can without snapping it because she's gotten really good at doing that over the last few set blocks with all the demon stuff and so on and so forth. Really, all that means is that she kind of prevents the Dreadhorde from, like, unlawful searches, and when they clash with the Oathwatch, she kills things, just not the friends. But sadly, no one really realizes that. Other planeswalkers try to kill Lily to stop the Horde, but Bolas intervenes since her death would obviously lead to his army crumbling, and when Gideon fails to slay Bolas with the Black Blade, thought that would work, the dragon orders Liliana to unleash the remaining God Eternals, so it's go time for Liliana. She finally throws caution to the wind and betrays Bolas, flipping the entire Dread Horde against him. But that of course also means that she broke her contract and she begins aging quickly into death. And that's it. That's the end of the story. Roll the credits. Until Gideon intervenes, using Heromancy, which I can't wait to learn more about because it's literally law magic and bears the burden of her contract himself. He then turns to dust, sacrificing his life to save hers, and Liliana is Emrakul pissed, man. Liliana commands Oketra and Bontu to attack Bolas as Niv-Mizzet strikes, and the Dragon God's stolen sparks are finally ripped away. The aftermath. Even after Nicol Bolas is defeated, Liliana feels no victory, only the crushing weight of Gideon Jura's death, since really it's actually just all her fault. Jace tries to comfort her but knows the reality. Staying on Ravnica is way too dangerous. Literally everyone is mad at Liliana and blames her for everything, so she takes Bolas's soul gem and planeswalks away. Liliana then goes to Dominaria, trying to avoid the incoming prisoner hunt that's coming her way. It was decided that she needed to be captured after the events of the War of the Spark, and as she's about to just give up on life and sink into a swamp, a fleeting image of a figure in white keeps her moving. Reaching the House of Vess, she encounters the Raven Man, who once again offers help. But she denies. And then some stuff happens with an imposter Liliana who's in her home, the forces hunting her have caught up, and Lily is in a bind. Kaya, leader of the hunters chasing her, agrees to let her live after Liliana convinces her that she did try her best to limit all of Bolus's damage, but to escape alive, some proof of death is required. Faced with a final choice, Liliana holds the spirit gem and the chain veil, and as the gem dissolves, she lets the veil go, surrendering it at last. Teo here delivers it to Ravnica, where Niv Mizzet then seals it away. And so free at last, Liliana takes on a new name. Anna Yora, honoring her mentor Lady Anna, unknowingly carrying Gideon's surname. Leaving the past behind, she then disappears into the multiverse, and that's the last we see of the character Liliana Vess, which, all things considered, is a really good capstone to her arc. Finally letting go of the veil, I'm pretty happy with it. For now. Hot for Teacher. Since we now need to make our way back to Arcavios and Strixhaven specifically, where Lily has changed her name again and is teaching dark magic under the name Professor Serafina Onyx. She spends long hours in Strixhaven's biblioplex searching obsessively for a way to bring Gideon Jura back from the dead. She'd actually once attended Witherbloom College in her earlier years, so slipping into the role of professor is disturbingly easy for her, especially since no one recognizes her under a new name. Instead, Witherbloom welcomes her, and Liliana takes a teaching post among the swampy pragmatists of life and death. The resurrection spell never comes. Instead, Beledros Witherbloom offers a much harder truth. Honoring the dead isn't about undoing loss, it's about how we treat the living. That's pretty deep, man. And taking that lesson to heart, Liliana steps up when the Auric threatens Strixhaven, recruiting students and the super planeswalker bros Will and Rowan Kenrith to fight back. When the mage hunters attack, Liliana coordinates evacuations and defenses, quickly realizing the assault is just a distraction, and after the founder dragons arrive, she saves the twins and guides them through forgotten tunnels beneath the biblioplex, only to be forcibly translocated away by the Oryx leader. It takes days for Liliana to return. The deans admit that they should have listened to her from the start and invite her to stay indefinitely. She does agree, but on one condition: she will now teach an introductory course on necromancy. Dropping the alias, she becomes Professor Liliana Vess, abandoning resurrection and choosing responsibility instead. So she's back. But peace doesn't last. The Raven Man invades her dreams, drawing her back to Dominaria, where the Biblioplex reveals the Raven Man's true identity finally. He is Lim Duel, one of the most powerful necromancers in the history of the multiverse. After confronting him and surviving an ambush by Phyrexians led by Alice Ilcor, Liliana hides Marcil's ring and Lim Duel's anchor beneath the Vess estate and then returns to Arcavios, and then the great and mighty legion of New Phyrexia invades the multiverse. Thanks for all that, Karn, by the way. Liliana, probably influenced by her students, returns to Dominaria to aid her old pals, the Gatewatch, but she's not part of the strike force sent to destroy a big fancy tree known as Realmbreaker. Instead, she hangs out with Ren, Chandra, and Vivian in one of her old cabins. So really, she doesn't do anything and goes back to Strixhaven to protect it from the invasion, and there she identifies the Invocation of the Founders as Strixhaven's best defense. Big spell, this tracks. The only problem is that only a small group led by Quintorius Kant can actually attempt to cast it. The spell is then interrupted when Quinn's Planeswalker Spark ignites, which does buy the school precious time, and then Lily just fully returns to her roots, using that moment of time bot to summon a massive zombie army to protect the kids. And that's where her story really leaves off for now. I'm very excited to see how it continues, because now that I know, what she's all about, I'm pretty excited to see her good side really run it up, hopefully. But if you prefer evil Lily, I kind of get it, and you can learn all about her greatest victim, Garrick Wildspeaker, in this video right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. It does mean a lot to me, and it does help the channel. And otherwise, I will hopefully see you in the next video. Kothopit.